So without further ado, you guys, TCNNF, the ticker for Trulieve. I get to welcome our good friend, Kim Rivers, CEO, back to our stage, and Chloe Aiello, one of the best moderators in the biz. I'm going to get off and I'm going to let you guys do your thing.
Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you again. Kim, I'm so excited to be able to moderate this conversation with you, talking about the evolving U.S. cannabis landscape.
It's so great to be here, Chloe, and great to see you as always.
Absolutely. Let's hop into it because we don't have a ton of time here. Trulieve obviously has a tremendous footprint in its home state of Florida, and as everyone has probably noticed, is growing quite rapidly alongside the cannabis industry here in the US. So how has momentum toward legalization on the state level impacted Trulieve's national expansion plans?
Yeah, the state level, things are definitely moving very quickly. I'm actually joining you here today from our first dispensary opening in Massachusetts. So it's a timely conversation for us. We opened the doors yesterday and are so excited to be here. But, Trulieve is moving right along with the rest of the industry at an accelerated pace, which we always have done. Of course, 100% year-over-year growth is very normal for us. But this year, we're going to be opening up additional stores, of course, in Massachusetts, as well as Pennsylvania, and then of course our large announcement with Harvest, which brings us into 11 states. So it really is a transitional moment for us, and I think for the industry as a whole, right? I mean, according to the Pew study that was just released, less than 10% of Americans believe that cannabis should not be legal, which means, of course, over 90% believe that some form of cannabis should be. So the tide is certainly shifting, and we see on a state-by-state basis folks catching up, and you layer on that, of course, the tax incentives for states, and really it's driving rapid state change, which we hope will influence national change here shortly.
Absolutely. I want to talk about M&A quickly here because it's obviously a hot topic in cannabis right now. We've seen several mega deals, including your own with Harvest Health, but more on that in a bit. What, in your opinion, does scale look like in the cannabis industry today, and how is it being managed?
Yeah, so that's, it's an interesting question because I think that the perception of scale has certainly shifted as it relates to cannabis, right? If you rewind several years ago, it was all about dots on a map and this whole concept of, quote, total addressable market without any rational connectivity to the number of outlets or the number of, the ability to actually sell through to that market vis-a-vis what you maybe put on an investor deck. And so what we're seeing now is a conversation shifting to really one around distribution and one around true scale on both supply chain as well as how we're getting those products to doors, whether that's through wholesale or through retail outlets. And so with Trulieve, we've talked a lot about our hub model. We've talked a lot about reaching scale in these different regions so that we have supply chain efficiencies as well as economies of scale moving forward. So I do think that conversation is now less about how many states can I be in, regardless of the program economics of those states and or the ability to truly achieve scale in those states, and more now focused around, okay, how can we really achieve scale through supply chain, and again, getting to a point where we can have meaningful relationships with customers, because the tides are changing, right? And I think folks are seeing that. And so it's not good enough now to have 15 states, but really only reaching, if we're really honest with one another, right? Really only reaching a fraction of those states' populations, whether it be because of regulatory restrictions or otherwise. And now we're shifting to, okay, really how much penetration do you have, and how are you building those very loyal and repeat customers?
And that's absolutely something that I've been hearing in my reporting from a lot of folks recently. It seems like the message is kind of clicking that you do need to have this deep market penetration rather than just sort of a land grab at this point. But I want to talk a little bit about your national expansion strategy, because you kind of did mention these geographic kind of focus. And, obviously part of your expansion strategy was to have depth in the Southwest, and that Harvest Health and Recreation deal has given you that. So how has that acquisition accelerated your strategy, and how does it segue into what's next for Trulieve?
Yeah, so, again, although Harvest was certainly a large scale deal, it was very much in line strategically with our national expansion strategy. And so we've talked a lot over the last really year and a half around this idea of regional hubs and being able to go again deep and create true scale in these regional markets. And so, of course, in the Southeast, we have our footprint in Florida, which is, 2 million square feet of grow, 83 retail locations, delivery, et cetera, 600 SKUs. We're very well poised there as expansion happens in neighboring states. Georgia, Alabama, we're waiting on their programs to launch, and other areas in the Southeast. In the Northeast, Harvest certainly accelerates our growth there. We're going to add Maryland, which we're excited about. It's a great market. And then additional depth in states like Pennsylvania, where we have been focused to really, achieve that scale in that kind of hub and spoke model that we have in the regions that we go in. And then in addition, of course, West Virginia is added and will come online. And then I can't leave out Massachusetts since I'm sitting here now. And then when we go to the Southwest, the Southwest was very much a new frontier for us. And so when we thought about, expansion that far away from our core operational, footprint, it was very important for us to make sure that we had two things. One, we had experience in the market and partners that were very experienced and connected to the market. And then secondly, that we had scale. And so Harvest is the largest player in Arizona. They were the first to make a recreational sale. They have 15 dispensaries with additional dispensaries licensed, and they have cultivation and production with room to grow on the cultivation and production side of things. They also have surrounding markets, processing in Nevada. They've got some California assets, and so there's some interesting expansion opportunities around that hub as well. But really, what it does is it sets us up for growth in the future. So there's so many tremendous catalysts that are happening across the country, kind of simultaneously right now, and you need to have again that depth in your management team, the depth in your operational capabilities to really be able to take advantage of those catalysts as they present themselves. So this really for us was a strategic setup for future growth. And the opportunities that we see across the combined platform are enormous. And now we have, again, the capabilities to, one, be profitable. So we're going to have, the combination will result in the most profitable cannabis company by far. And then to be able to use that profitability to do what we do, which is to continue to invest and go deep in those markets, just like we have done to date in our markets that we're currently in.
Absolutely, and growth certainly is the name of the game, especially when it comes to this sort of momentum that we're seeing toward reform, in the state level and the federal level even. But you mentioned profitability, and I want to talk about that because Trulieve has reported 13 quarters consecutively of profitability. So particularly given the volatility of the past few years and the fact that you've managed to accomplish this, do you see yourself as a leader in this respect? And what does that say about both Trulieve and the cannabis industry more broadly?
Yeah, so it's so funny. Actually, Steve White and I, who's the CEO of Harvest, and I were laughing because he was one of the first cannabis executives that I met actually at a Benzinga conference many years ago in 2018. It was my first panel. And we were the only two folks at the conference talking about EBITDA. And so we kind of connected over that point. And, Harvest had a little bit of a different path for the last couple of years, but Steve's done a great job of getting that company back on track and really profit focused again by focusing again on core markets. And so I do think that, Trulieve has had, I'd like to think that we've had a role in changing the conversation in the industry to show that there is a way to both have, exceptional accelerated growth, but also being fiscally, responsible and really guarding shareholder value to make sure that you have ROI and accountability for dollars invested to achieve profitability. What it's done for us is, one, I've always said that, I am not the right CEO if I'm concerned about how we're going to make payroll or if we're concerned about how to keep the lights on, and we're dependent on the capital markets. The capital markets are there as a growth tool, and that's how we view them, not as a survivability tool. And so for us, it definitely has allowed us to continue to grow through the ups and downs of the capital markets, to continue to reinvest in the business and to take advantage of opportunities, because as we know, the capital markets and the reality of what's happening on the ground very much are often not the same thing. We're seeing incredible demand for cannabis right now as folks come out of this, lockdowns and COVID around the country. Pent-up demand is insane, and our stores are busier than ever. But yet, when you look at the capital markets, it doesn't always tell that story. So we think it's very important to have that profitability so that we can continue to do what we need to do to execute our business plans, kind of despite of what might be happening in the capital markets.
Sure, and I'm sure that entrepreneurs looking to build, a cannabis business at this point in time are probably taking notes here. I do want to talk a little bit about the future of the industry. So, in your opinion, what's next?
Well, I mean, certainly, as I mentioned, this year I think is going to be an incredible year for financial growth for all of the MSOs as we continue to execute on our business plans. It is all about execution right now and being able to take advantage of the demand surge that we're seeing across the country, and then also it's going to be about prioritization because there are a lot of opportunities out there and a lot of things happening all at the same time. So I think that you're really going to start to see real strategy emerge among the top tier companies that's defined and hopefully focused, and you're really going to be able to start to differentiate one company from the other in terms of how we prioritize the opportunities that are coming. So state level opportunities are abundant. More and more states are going to have programs come online. Southern states are going to come online, which is going to be really interesting and fun to watch. And then of course the recreational conversation, which is certainly continuing to happen at state level. I mean, we just saw Connecticut, Alabama. It's continuing across the country, and hopefully we will see a bill that comes to fruition in Congress in some form or fashion. I would think that within the next 12 months.
Sure. And, I do want to ask about that in a little bit, but I'm wondering, with sort of this pressure now with, reform of some kind of pending, is there kind of a new sort of pressure for cannabis companies to grow as quickly as possible to, expand their footprint before something significant happens on the federal level?
Yeah, so I'm maybe not the best person to ask because there's been pressure on us for a long time to do something because we had that single state operator label, and I think it's most important to have a strategy and to be very disciplined about executing that strategy. Certainly to be thoughtful and mindful of what's happening around you, but also to make sure that what you have in place now can pivot and adjust when that reality is here. I do think that companies again are focused on distribution. I think that they are focused in looking at their supply chain and looking at how they would service a different, more broader market. But you can't lose sight of the fact that we don't know when that's going to happen and to what extent. And so really, again, being disciplined about profitability, looking at the state opportunities, sticking to building your customer relationships and your brands. I think that those are really the things in the near term that are going to matter, while again, positioning for something larger, but not getting over your skis and ahead of yourselves to the point where you're then having to move backwards because things haven't accelerated at the rate that you may have thought.
Absolutely. So given this forward-looking conversation that we're having here, what's next for Trulieve?
Well, we are going to do what we do best, and that is to execute. And so you will see us, again, focused on, getting these transactions closed and doing what we said that we were going to do. We're a very boring company in that respect, and that we do just, we lay out a plan and then we execute it, and then, we up that plan and continue to move forward. So there's tremendous growth ahead for us. We're going to go deeper in the states that we're in. We're going to continue to look for good opportunities, and we're opportunistic when opportunities arrive. We've got a great position in terms of our cash position, and we're going to continue to grow. So I think it's going to be a big year for us. I'm really excited, and I would say that the best is yet to come. So stay tuned.
Exciting, and we will be watching closely. Pivoting now to social equity. This is top of mind for a lot of cannabis companies. It is top of mind for a lot of lawmakers in an almost unprecedented way right now. Where do you see the industry going in terms of social equity and kind of giving back to the community?
I'm thrilled that it is a must-have at this point, and I think that that's really where we're at as an industry, and I think that's so important. Obviously, as a female CEO, and we take social equity very, very seriously at Trulieve. I'm really excited to announce that, assuming that they're voted in at our annual shareholders meeting in a few days, that we're going to have 50% of our board comprised of women. So I'm thrilled, obviously, to have that diversity on our board level. And then, of course, our metrics in-house are approximately 50% female and about 40% minority. So I'm a big believer that the best companies have diverse voices around the table. I think that, it was encouraging to see with the MORE Act that came out in the House that there were some specific provisions there for funding opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses, specific call-outs for the SBA, which is a very well-known small business financing program that the federal government runs, would be available to cannabis companies. And so I think that it's really a capital conversation at this point. So I think it's fantastic that states are offering, licenses or have different programs, but then it switches to, it's all about how do we get these businesses actually launched and stable and profitable. And so it's just like any other entrepreneurial journey. And if the capital is not there, and it's really not there because they can't take advantage of the programs that would otherwise be there to support them, then they're going to have a higher propensity to fail. And so I think that it's our job, it's my job as a successful operator to ensure that I'm pushing that narrative ahead, and that we don't forget about the important side of the business, which is how do we get these businesses funding that at a reasonable rate, so that, again, they've got 280E, they've got all these other capital pressures on them being in this industry, but at least hopefully setting them up for success. And so I'm really excited about the conversation. I think it's our responsibility as large scale and profitable operators to ensure that we are broadening the ecosystem and broadening the community, because there is plenty of demand for all kinds of businesses, and it's important to have not only large businesses but also small business participation.
And I think that everyone would agree. It's been so interesting to hear your perspective on that, because obviously we've seen, to varying degrees, success and, in some cases failure on the state level of these equity programs. So, looking ahead with this as a broader conversation, federally, it'll be interesting to see how operators, including Trulieve and other major players in the space, do sort of put forth this narrative. I do know that we're kind of running out of time here, but I did want to say, you said it's your responsibility as an operator. What kind of do you think that operators can do to kind of push this narrative forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have a meeting with anyone in Washington without having a conversation about what we just talked about. So I think first and foremost, making sure that it is included in the conversation, along with things like safe banking and uplisting and 280E and all of those things, that it has to be part of the conversation in a very real way. Number one. Two, coming up with solutions, right? Giving them action items that we know can make a difference. Three, again, walking the walk. So ensuring that internally within our organization, that we are representative and that we do have diversity that is real and it's tangible and it's at all levels, including leadership. And then I would say also, of course, giving back and really plugging into those communities, being an ally in a real sense. Yesterday at our Northampton opening, we gave a percentage of profits to Mass Equity. And so, and we participate, of course, in a very meaningful way, both financially and with our representation in Pride. And we do, expungement clinics. We are working with Minorities for Medical Marijuana to host seminars across the country where there are social equity licenses, to educate folks in terms of what they need to put on their application, what they need to set up a cannabis business. Again, so we're, I think it's walking the walk, not just talking the talk, and then showing up and making sure that because we are blessed with a seat at the table, that we're using that position to again, advocate for meaningful change, and that we're aligned with those voices, and that we're checking in and making sure that the messages that we're delivering are in fact what would be ultimately beneficial for those communities.
Great. And yes, so interesting to watch, this new industry being built from the ground up, and to have such major players in it, take such an acute interest in this issue.
Absolutely. It's, like I said, it's our responsibility. So
now, I think we're about out of time here. I don't know if Patrick's gonna
I
jump
would
in and cut
let you
us
go
off.
all day if I could.
I
If
can,
I
I
could,
mean, yeah, I think you
I mean, it's so good. If you have any final thoughts, maybe, anything you want to leave our audience with.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that now it continues to be an amazing and interesting time. I think of it as an investor for sure, as we continue to see divergence in the market, right? I do think that change is coming at the federal level. Certainly, we know that there's acute interest from larger investment companies that want to come in, but they can't, whether it's custodial issues or because we're still listed on the OTC or the CSE. But that's going to change, and it's an incredible opportunity. I always say that it's a generational one, and we're happy to be part of it, and I'm happy to be here to continue to create shareholder value, and just thank all of the folks out there that are our shareholders and our supporters. And as I always said, onward, let's go.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations again on Massachusetts. I know
Thanks.
that's a big feather in the cap for you guys. So thanks, Kim, for being here. Again, you guys, the ticker is TCNNF. Chloe, great as always, and I'll see you both soon.